Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to make a three-dimensional letter from chipboard. So first, a few pieces of vocabulary. We're going to work with chipboard, and chipboard is just a thin cardboard, like a cereal box material. So it's not really difficult to cut through like a cardboard box. And we're also going to work with gummed paper tape. So that looks like this. It's paper on one side, it is gummed on the other side, that's the shiny side, and it has to be wet to be sticky, kind of like a old-fashioned stamp or an envelope that you have to lick in order for it to stick. For this project, the first step is to draw your letter shape on a white paper so that it touches all four sides of the paper. So I'm touching on the left, I'm touching on the right, I'm touching at the bottom, and I'm touching at the top. So I'm using this entire white paper because it's a little smaller than your piece of chipboard. Then cut it out and trace it. I'll show you my cutout letter. Cut it out, trace it onto two pieces of chipboard. So you'll have one, and then you'll have a second one. Two, because one will be the front and one will be the back of your letter. So make sure you have two pieces of chipboard, one for the front, one for the back. You're going to cut 2-inch wide pieces of chipboard to the lengths that match your letter. So lengths is L-E-N-G-T-H-S. I have my letter here that I've already started. If I want a piece to go across the top of my A, I'm going to line these up. Always use something to mark with a pencil or a pen how long it needs to be, and then use your scissors to cut that section. So now I have a piece to go across the top of my A. A little bit smaller is better than a little bigger. You can always cover the gap. So now that I've cut my chipboard to a length that matches my letter, start by taping across the inside so that half of the paper tape is on the letter and half is on the edge. So you can see I've done that here. Half of the paper tape is on the letter, half is on the edge, and this is the inside of my letter shape. As you need, this tape is really wide. I like to use it in halves. So this is going to go right there. Half on the letter, and half on the edge piece. To use your gummed paper tape, first we trim it to the right size, then wet the shiny side on the sponge. So I have my sponge in my tray here. I'm just going to wet it. I don't want to get this whole thing soggy. It doesn't work as well that way. So now that it's nice and wet, you probably feel that it gets a little bit sticky. You press it onto the chipboard and you smooth it down until it sticks. So nothing fancy there. It's tape. It's a little bit gooier tape than probably normal, but that way it lasts a long time. So you work your way around the edges, building up the sides until you have a letter-shaped box. So down here, for example, I've done my tape on the insides. I'm going to go ahead and attach these two to each other. It's very important to make sure you have tape on both the inside and outside seam, because otherwise it will fall apart, and that is not what you want. So on the inside seams here, I need to go ahead and put some tape on both of these. Tape on the inside doesn't matter. The tape on the outside matters for looks. So you do want to try to make it nice and even, because even though we're going to paint over it, it still shows up somewhat in the end. Definitely make sure you cover the entire seam on the outside. So some people get lazy and they just put like a little strip of tape, like this. This doesn't leave you a nice finished edge. It looks rough and uneven, and it's not going to paint well. So especially on the outside, like you can see I did here, make sure you cover it all the way across. So on this bottom piece, when you come to something that is curved, like I have this paintbrush on the end of my A here, you need to make sure that you actually bend your chipboard. It's not hard to do, it bends, but it springs back. So you need to make sure that you actually bend it with some force. So I want to make this last on this curve. First I should measure how long it needs to be by lining it up and then marking it. And then cutting it. And then instead of letting it spring back like this, I'm going to go ahead and bend it way more than I need to. So that it'll hold its shape when I put it there next to that piece. When you put tape on a curve, you have to do some fancy things. It can be kind of complicated. So I'm going to show you my trick. If it's too difficult for you, then I would say avoid curves in the letter that you build. Basically, I take my piece of tape that's like this, and I cut little pieces into it. You can see on my finished R here, maybe, that there are, it looks like little tiny pieces, but instead of cutting it into little tiny pieces, I actually just cut little alternating cuts into one piece of tape. So I fold it in half and then unfold it. Now I can see the center line, and I come from one side, cutting about every inch or half inch or so, just to the line, try not to go over, and then I alternate where my cuts are on the other side. Obviously if they match, the whole thing would fall apart, but this way, see how it already wants to curve? It'll curve really nicely, and it'll make things a whole lot easier for me. It is hard to manage when it's wet though. I have too much water on my tape, so it's not sticking very well. It's just kind of letting go because it's too goopy. So that is why you only wet it on the sponge. Don't get it any wetter than that. But I'm going to keep pressing on it until it sticks the way I want it to. And the inside doesn't matter too much, but the outside matters a lot more. So I'm going to make sure my technique is a little better for the outside. So the very end would be to add the second piece to the top and tape it on. So once I finish building all the walls all the way around this letter, like you can see this part looks pretty good. Then I cut out my second A, I rest it right on top, and then I would tape it on. Obviously this would only end up having tape on the outside seam. There'd be none on the inside, because once you put the top on, there's no way to put tape on the inside seam. That should give you everything that you need to complete your letter project so it's structurally sound and looks good.